QuickBooks Online 2021, class tracking by division or profit center. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online 2021. Here we are in our QuickBooks Online practice file. In prior presentations, we set up a free 30-day trial. We then set up our chart of account, turned on class tracking and location tracking, which can be done in the cog up top here. Go into the account and settings area, then into the advanced area, and then turn on the class tracking and location tracking. We then created some information that we broke out. Let's take a look at that now, focusing in on the income statement. We're going to open up a few different tabs up top, go into the tab up top, right-clicking on it, and then we're going to duplicate it. We're going to do that 2 more times. I'm going to right-click on the tab up top, duplicate it again, right-click on the tab up top, and duplicate it again. So now we're going to be opening up our profit and loss. We want to see our P&L by class. We want to see our P&L without the classes, and then possibly we'll open up our balance sheet as well. To do so, we're going to go on down to the accounting. To the report on the left-hand side. We're looking for our profit and loss by class. One easy way you can look at your general reports by class is by typing in up top, just class, so classes, and then you got your list by class, your profit and loss by class, and so on. So if you want to look at the default reports by class, you can do that. There's other things you can do with the classes, such as filter by class, but that's one way that you can get this nice report. I'm going to close up the hamburger, change the date range from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21, run that report. Hold down Control, scroll up just a bit, and there we have our report broken out by class. Let's go to the tab to the left of it now, open up our normal P&L, profit and loss, go into the reports on the left-hand side to do so, and then we're going to open up the good old P and the L, the profit and the loss, date range change up top, 01/01/21 to 12/30/31/21. Run that, close the burger, and then go to the next tab to the left. Now we're going to open up the balance sheet, go into the reports on down below once again, opening up that BS balance sheet. Date range change from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21. Run it. Close up the hamburger. We're going to go back to the tab to the right now, focusing in on the income statement by class. So in prior presentations, we broke out the selling and admin as kind of 2 types of divisions, and we looked at different ways that we can break that out, one with the use of class tracking. Now we're going to think about like a profit center kind of situation, and you can even think about this as different kind of locations that you might have in place. And I'm going to change this back to selling and admin in kind of like a vertical type of fashion. And then imagine that we have 2 different profit centers that we will be allocating to. Now, as we think of the 2 different profit centers, we may have to use something like an activity base or something like that, some kind of ratio analysis to be breaking out between these 2 different profit centers. You might think of a similar kind of fashion if you were doing something like locations as well, which means that even if using 2 different locations, you want to consider whether or not you want to use the class tracking feature or the location tracking feature to do so, because the class tracking, once again, gives you that more flexibility to do things like breaking out one expense with an allocation method between 2 different classes. So even if those 2 different classes are 2 different locations, you might want to use that functionality, whereas the location feature then locks you in to only having 1 location per transaction. That's beneficial when you want a balance sheet, for example, by class, because it's less likely that your balance sheet by class will be out of balance if you were to do that. It's also nice to be able to use location and class tracking because you're running 2 different reports. So if you want to basically use one report that you're going to break out in one kind of vertical fashion and another report in another vertical fashion, it's nice to have class tracking and location tracking in that sense as well. So we're going to go through this, and we're basically going to modify this thing out and now take this back to admin and selling to be broken out by sub-accounts, and then think about allocating out between the Profit Center 1 and Profit Center 2. So let's see what that would look like. I'm going to just drill down on each of these transactions and reallocate this. We're just going to rework this financial statement. Let's go into the sales item up top, and let's imagine this was going to go to Profit Center 1. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to just go back into this transaction on the revenue side of things. And then I'm just going to reallocate this. I'm not going to use the location. I'm going to remove the locations because we're not dealing with locations at this point. Class tracking, I'm going to then call it PC1 this time for just Profit Center 1. Or I think we had Division 1 and 2. Let's use that terminology. Division 1 and Division 2. And so we'll use that instead of the admin and the selling. So let's save and close that. Save it and close it. And I'm going to scroll back up top. And then let's see what this is going to look like. Now we have 3 tabs up top. We're going to end up with only 2 because I'm going to reallocate everything from selling and admin to Division 1, Division 2, and indicate selling and admin through the vertical analysis here with the sub-accounts. So this one, I'm going to put this item here to Division 2, we're going to say. So I'm going to go into that item. We're then going to drill down in on it. And I'm going to say this is going to go to Division 2. So this is going to be D2. D2. R2, D2? D2. There's no R2. It's just whenever you hear D2, you kind of want to say R2. Seems like. At least I do. So then I'm going to go back and then now I lost my report. This is going to be class report P&L by class, and the date range should be good. Okay, so then we have those 2 items now allocated out. Now we're going to go down to the expenses, which could be a little bit more confusing. And this is where, notice these items up top, if I was to use either the class tracking or location tracking, I would have been okay because I allocated the entire thing to D1 or D2. But these down here, I might then be in a situation where I have one automobile expense, for example, and I'm using some kind of allocation method to allocate between the divisions, the departments or whatever, D1 and D2. So if I need to allocate in that format, then if I want to do that within the actual form, I need to use classes to do that. I can't do that with locations. Your other option would be to put everything into, say, unclassified, for example, and then at the end of the period, reallocate out with a journal entry allocating between the 2 divisions. And if you do that, you could do that once again using classes or locations because you're not going to be trying to split up a particular transaction. So let's take a look at some of these. For example, if I go into this automobile expense and I say, okay, there's the automobile expense, and I'm using some kind of allocation method. We'd call it like an activity base or something like that, possibly like a revenue, of the percentage of revenue or something like that to allocate between the automobile expense for Division 1 and Division 2. Then I want to break it out on this actual same report. So I'm going to say, all right, then, for example, let's say that 80% is going to the Division 1 or let's say 20% Division 1, 80% Division 2, right? So I might say then, okay, I'm going to break this out and I'm going to say the 300 is now going to be 80% of it. I'm going to say, or 20% of it, 300 times 0.2. That's going to be $60 here is going to then go into D1. And then the difference, which I'm also going to take to 60200 here, is going to be for the difference, which was 300 times 80% times 0.8. That's going to be the 240. So 240, I'm going to say, is in Division 2. So notice what we're doing with this method is we're breaking out between Division 1 and Division 2 with the same expense form, which again, you have to do with classes. You can't do that with the location categorization. So if I was to say that, I'm going to say save it and close it. Save it and close it. And then I'm going to go back up top. And so now we have under the selling and admin, the auto, which is broken out between D1 and D2 now. So that's broken out between D1 and D2. let's go into this one. Let's do a similar kind of process for the 250 here. I'm gonna drill down in on it. And again, remember that if you don't know what this allocation is, then you could do all your allocation to one category or non-specific category, and then do a journal entry at the end. And if you do a journal entry at the end to reallocate, then you could use either locations or classes, because the journal entry could be for the entire, possibly for the entire transaction. So I'm going to go then into the 250. We're going to go into the 250 here, and then we'll say, once again, down here, I'm going to say we got the 250. So the 250 times 0.8 is going to be breaking out between 250. So I'm going to say this one is going to be D1 is going to be the 50, and that's going to go into D1. And then D2, I'm going to make this 61700 here, and that's going to be the 200 that's going into D2. So I'm allocating that out between the two, D1, D2. Let's save it. Let's close it. Let's check it out. Saving, closing. We're going to go back to our report up top, back to the report. And so that's now being broken out between those two items. Let's do the one for the utilities. So utilities, we're going to go into this item here. We'll go into the utilities. And I'm just going to make up a different breakout for the utilities. I'm just going to say, let's say that this utilities was, let's say 120 here, and that's going to be D1. And then we've got the 68600 utilities, and let's say this is going to be for the 480 D2. So I just made up another transaction there, and we're going to say save it and close it. Save and close. And then back to our reports. So now we've got it between D1 and D2 there for these items. Let's go to the meals. So meals and entertainment. Let's imagine meals and entertainment just went to one category, to D2. So it's all part of D2. So I'm going to go into here and just allocate this entire thing to, let's say, D2. So we'll save and close that. And then I'm going to go back up top and go back to our report here. So there we have that item, and then we have this selling utilities in selling. Let's go into that transaction. Go into this item, and so we've got it going to the selling category for this utilities. Let's actually make this one go into the 78600. So we'll and this is going to be then broken out between 80 for D1, and then I'm going to break the same 78600. And then I'm going to say this is going to be 320 for D2. So there we got that broken out. I'm going to say save it and close it. And let's go back onto our report. Back to the report. All right, so now we have D1 and D2. We broke these things out. Now we broke it back out into basically selling expenses, admin expenses down below, now broken out by division. Some of those we might have to use some kind of percentage method to break out. Some of those we might just be allocated to one division or the other. It would kind of depend on the expense item. Now we might be able to do that as we do the data input, or we might say do all the data input into, say, unclassified or something like that, and then go back in and reclassify the items, either using a journal entry or going line by line and just reallocating to Division 1 or Division 2 by whatever allocation method that we want to use. So you can imagine a situation like that. Let's add a couple more down here on the bottom side here for the administrative. So we'll add a couple more down here. I'm going to go to the first tab to do that. I'm going to say plus, and let's make another expense form. And we're going to add a couple more on this side. So I'm going to say then This is going to be the 15, let's say. 15, and then we'll have, this is going to be for, let's say, 70200. 70200, I'm going to say for 75 for Division 1. Division 1, same account, 70200, but now I'm going to break it out for Division 2, which is going to be, I'm going to say 300 for Division 2. And let's say save and new, save and new. Let's do the same for a computer and internet expense. So I'm going to say down here, this is going to be 71700. And we'll give that computer and internet 84.60. And let's say that's going to be for D1. D1, and then we're going to have 71700. And this is going to be for the amount of 338. And this is going to be D2 for D2. And so let's add those two. I'm going to say save it and close it this time. Save it and close it. Let's check out our P&L by class now. Running it, making it fresh again. And so there we have it, our information broken out in this way as well. So notice how we can kind of set that up in this format, and that utilizes both our selling and admin, you know, as subcategories and our class tracking, and allows us to use one form to allocate between the two. Now remember, you could do this in another format. You could say, hey, look, I don't know whether I should be allocating to D1 or D2 for certain items. Right? Maybe I don't know until the end what the best activity base is, or how I'm going to be allocating between one or the other. So you might put, for example, everything into unclassified and then classify it at the end of the month or year. So for example, you might say, okay, the supplies, let's go back to the first tab, add another expense account here. And let's say we're going to make a supplies type of expense account, which I'm going to say is account 71, let's make it 74900 expense account. And I could say tab, and it's going to be an expense type of account. And I'm just going to make it other, and I'm going to make it supplies. And it's going to be number 74900. It's going to be a sub account then of the 70, which is admin expenses. So we'll save that. And then I'm going to say the amount is for 3,000. But I don't know which class it goes to. So I don't know which class it goes to. And maybe I'm planning on allocating it to the class at the end once I kind of figure out what the allocation should be. So note, if I do this method, then I could use classes and assign it to a class that I assign out as unclassified, or simply use unclassified, which will be there if I do not assign a class, and then assign it out. Also note that if I use this method, then I might be able to still use the location classing, because I'm not breaking it out between two classes on one expense. I'm just using one category. So locations may work because it has one thing for that expense form. So if I save and close it, for example, it says, hey, you didn't assign a class. I say, I don't know where to put it right now. And then if I go back to the profit and loss and run this report, now it's in not specified. Now this not specified area, I might look at it at the end of the month and say, hey, okay, now I'm going to go through everything that's not specified, determine what the breakout should be for Division 1 and Division 2, and then break it out. Once I do that determination, I could go back into this account and then drill down on it and divide it out using that expense form, using the two different categories for the expense form. But maybe I have a whole lot of transactions here and I don't want to go in and change the transaction. Maybe I would rather do it. It would probably be better to do it with a journal entry. Maybe I then determine what the allocation should be. Then I'm going to do a journal entry breaking it out between Division 1 and Division 2 periodically, possibly at the end of the month. If you use this method, then you're not breaking out. You might be able to use locations instead of classes, in other words, because you're not kind of trying to use one form to allocate between two different classes. So for example, I could go over to then the first tab and say, okay, I need to break this out at the end of the month between Division 1, 20%, Division 2, 80%. So I'm going to go to the first tab to do that. I'm just going to make a journal entry to do that. It's just an adjusting entry at the end of the period. Journal entry, I'm going to say journal entry, and I'll do it like at the end of the month, most likely 01/31/21. And I'm going to say I want to take it out of unclassified. It's all the same account because it's going to be the account that we set up of 74900. We're just trying to allocate it to the proper class. So I'm going to credit this account for the entire amount that's going to unclassified. So it's not in any class. And then I'm going to be putting it into 74900. I'm going to take 20% of it, which was 3,000 times 0.2. It won't let me do that calculation there. Let's do it here. 3,000 times 0.2, which is going to be 600. And I'm going to put that to D1 class. And then I'm going to take the 74900 and the difference, 2,400, and put that then to D2. Now notice that you also have the ability to do the locations here. It's not like they only give you one location screen up top. So I believe that you could break this out by like location 1 and location 2 if you wanted to with the journal entry. And you can basically assign two different locations, it looks like, with one journal entry. So you could then kind of reassign this out even with the location tracking method possibly in that situation. So just keep that in mind. But in any case, now we're going to reallocate this at the end of the period. I'm going to say save and close. Save and close, and I'm going to say yes. Go back to my profit and loss by class, scroll back up top, run the report now. And so now we've allocated it back out for the 600 and the 2,400. I did so with a journal entry, which I could have done for multiple transactions that have been put into the supplies account and allocating them out, with that one journal entry. Also note that if you do any transaction like this and you're trying to run a balance sheet that you want to be in balance by class, doesn't matter if you're using classes or locations, you want to be careful with the transaction like that adjustment to make sure that your balance sheet, if you're using a balance sheet by location or class, that'll line up. But in any case, we've got that broken out. Those are some of the methods you can use. Now notice that this not specified didn't disappear even though there's a 0 here, and that's because this still has activity in it. So anything with activity, it is showing. And that's really nice because I can then go into this one and I can see it. There it is going in and out. But if I want to remove it for to display the report, it's easy to do. You can go up top and just simply hit this drop down and say you want to see the columns, just the non-zero items. And then I'm going to run that. Just show me the non-zero ones, and that should take out the non-specified because there's nothing in that column except an item with a 0, even though there was activity in it.